call the September 2020 USD 350 Board of Education meeting to order. Welcome visitors. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Consent agenda.
I have nothing unusual to report on the consent agenda.
Okay. Any motion?
Mr. President, move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Patron comments? Okay.
Can we get a chance later?
Yep, we'll give you a shot. Yep.
Okay. School operations update.
One easy item I wanted to update you on is KDHE has a school-based testing pilot for testing our staff and students. There's two different ways we could do this. This would be screening of people at random. We would just pick certain people and test them to see how widespread the COVID is. The second strategy is that if we have people that are showing symptoms, we have reason to believe they may be ill, we want to see whether they have COVID or not, we can administer a test here rather than sending them to the doctor. This wouldn't be mandatory. I can't force a student or a staff member to take the test, but see, this is more of a service that we can provide, that instead of running to Great Bend or Pratt or wherever, we can administer those tests here. So we opted for that strategy number 2, that we would test people that are symptomatic. If they want to know whether they have COVID or not, we can do that here. So I don't have any more details on that, how many doses we would have, or how many tests we would have, and how that would all work, but it would be the rapid test, and our school nurse could administer that. The more difficult thing, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the procedures, not just here, but all across our state, about quarantining students and staff members and excluding them. So when we're talking about quarantining, the school district doesn't have authority to quarantine anybody. Our procedures are laid out in our plan, and this is really just from KDHE and KSDE. We didn't make this up. So this, when there is a positive case, we look at 2 days before they're symptomatic, or 2 days before they tested if there's no symptoms, for the infectious period. So if someone is around that person 2 days before they have symptoms, up to when they actually have symptoms, we try to determine whether they are a close contact or not. This is the same procedure that our health department is required to go through. If there's just a case in the community, they identify close contacts, and they do that with the help of KDHE. So what is a close contact? It's within 6 feet of that person for 10 minutes or more. Or if they've been exposed to secretions, somebody sneezes on somebody, something like that. So if there's a positive case, I'm within 6 feet of that person for 10 minutes or more, I'm identified as a close contact. That guidance is very clear from both KDHE and CDC. CDC actually says 15 minutes. Our state says 10 minutes. And what's important about this too is it says this is irrespective of whether the person with COVID-19 or the contact was wearing a mask, a cloth mask. So in our procedures, in KDHE's guidance, from the CDC, at this time, differential determination of close contact for those using fabric face coverings is not recommended. So Derek and I are close to each other, within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. If we don't have a mask on, I'm identified as a close contact if he's a positive case. If we're within 6 feet of each other for 10 minutes or more, and we're both wearing masks and wearing them correctly, I'm still a close contact. Okay, does that make sense where we're at on that? Again, we didn't make this up. This is our guidance across the board. So what happens when we have a case in cooperation with the health department? Our school staff identifies a list of close contacts, and we provide that to the health department. We contact the families directly. The communication about quarantine comes from the county health department. So, are we quarantining the kids or kids and staff, or is the health department? Again, we don't have the authority to do that. Our guidelines state that we identify it to them. If we don't, I don't know what happens. If we just say we don't know, or we're not going to provide those. What happened in Maxville was they couldn't identify, because it was a weekend, they didn't have the list, they couldn't identify the close contacts. So the health department said, quarantine the whole high school. So that's our situation, that's where we're at, that's where our policy and guidance is. Is that the right thing to do? It sure doesn't feel like it. I've got a serious concern that we continue to quarantine people. And maybe you know, my kid is one of those. She's not happy at home. She's missing out on education. She doesn't get to go to youth group. She doesn't get to see her grandparents. She doesn't get to go to the volleyball match. She doesn't get to see her friends at school. She doesn't get to do any of that. So it's more than just being able to come to school or play volleyball. There's a whole life to live. And that's not for my kid, that's for any kid. That's a concern. So when we're talking about this, I did put the chair out here to remind us that that's what we're talking about. It's those kids. Obviously, the side of that we need to consider is we don't want the virus to spread. That's our goal with all of this. That's why we're wearing these masks. We want to limit the spread of the virus, obviously. But we want to keep the kids in school. And right now it doesn't feel like we're very balanced. And my concern moving forward is that people are going to be dishonest. I'm not getting my kid tested. Or we're going to lie about, we're going to give them Tylenol and send them to school. Because I don't want to quarantine my whole family. I don't want to have to miss work. But we have parents in that situation. If they have to quarantine with their kid, they miss work. That people will say, well, if the masks don't matter, then we're just going to stop wearing them. And I think we've proven with what we're doing, our kids and staff are wearing the masks, they're doing well with it. And of the kids we've had quarantined, we're not quite to day 14 yet on our most recent one, 0 have gotten sick. They're wearing masks, they're doing things right. So it is a real concern that moving forward, it could make it worse. We can't just disregard and say we're going to do whatever we want and forget about anything, any restrictions on anything, and go back to normal. I don't think anybody's suggesting that, but at some point we have to make a better determination of how can we keep kids in school but still do what we need to do to limit the spread of the virus. One thing we talked about as a district leadership team, we got our staff together, and what could we change? Well, whatever we change, we're going against the guidance that's given to us. But if we could change something, maybe it's if we're all wearing masks and we're wearing them properly, then the rule isn't 6 feet for 10 minutes, maybe it's more like 3 feet for an hour. So none of our students, if they're staying apart, wearing their masks, and they just happen to be in a classroom with somebody that tested positive, they're not going to have to stay home for 2 weeks and miss out on life for 2 weeks. But if they're not wearing the masks, if we say, forget it, I'm not going to do that, well then it is the 6 feet for 10 minutes. So there needs to be some incentive that the masks are making a difference, we need to wear them. Because right now it just feels like, then forget it, let's not wear it. I know there'll be a lot of questions. It'd be okay if I just let Danny, Danny wanted to say a few things.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I typed this up for your protection and mine, so I didn't go on too long. I appreciate you giving me just a second here. I'm here as a teacher, a dad, and a coach, and I would like to ask the Board of Education to give the kids the chance to do what they love to do what motivates them, what makes them happy, and what keeps them going. I'm the dad of a quarantined daughter, both of my daughters actually. This next part might be the most important thing that I say, and I can't overstate it enough. I don't like the effects that the quarantine has had on my daughter, especially her mental health. I feel like she's like a wilted flower. The first thing she said to me was, when she found out she was quarantined, was, "Dad, I did everything they told me to do, and I'm still being punished." She wore a mask, she washed her hands, she sat in her assigned seat, and none of it mattered. And I agree with that. It may be fun to some kids to stay home, but it's punishment for many, including my daughter. And when the police knock at your door and serve a 16-year-old with quarantine papers, I understand why she feels like that's a punishment. She and most of the other kids want to be at school, and it's a punishment not to be able to. Kids need to be able to see a benefit from wearing a mask. As a teacher, I can tell you that some kids won't wear them or don't wear them correctly. Wearing a mask all day is hard. I can attest to that myself. And if kids are quarantined, whether they wear a mask or not, then it's going to be a tough battle for teachers. I would like to see us be able to tell kids that if they're wearing a mask, they won't be considered a close contact. This is not in what I typed, but I can tell you from my experience, from what Mr. Meyer said, schools can't quarantine kids, but that's what happens, because when you call the health department, when I call the health department and I ask them, they say the school turned them in as a close contact. And so it is, in my opinion, it is the school quarantining them. And I would like to see that change. The virus is something new and uncertain. I think it's perfectly okay for us to take a step back and reevaluate what we're doing to make a change for the better. Many schools are doing this. Larned is having a special County Commission and Board of Education meeting tonight, just like we are, to discuss their policy and changing their policy just as we are. I can name several other schools that are doing the same thing. La Crosse is another one that had kids quarantined, and they went back on that and changed their mind. As a coach, I'd like to say we need to change our policy, not just for sports, but for any activities that kids love to do. Anything, whether it be band or vocal or art or whatever kids enjoy doing, I don't feel right about us taking that from them. We will wear masks, we'll change our practice plans, wash our hands till they bleed if we have to, but please don't take away our students' chance to do what they love just because they've been sitting in the wrong place at the wrong time. I also think it is a mistake for any team to be quarantined because one player gets the virus. Safety and common sense can come into play. Could we hybridize our larger classes for where social distancing is difficult? Could we remote learn for those classes only? Could we move frequently to avoid close contacts for too long? These are all options, of course, but please don't do this to our kids. They've already are having a hard enough time living life. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Any other thoughts?
I think we need to make some changes. I think this corona deal is kind of an ongoing deal, and I think we need to tweak it as needed. And I think the 2-week deal is almost a punishment at this point. You know, if we were getting some cases of kids coming back sick, that'd be different, but so far we're not. And I agree with Danny that the kids are mentally affected.
So we have the ability to say, you know, Joe Smith has it, but our kids had their masks on, and they were more than 3 feet apart, so we're not turning anybody in for close contact. We have that ability, if we put that in our policy.
I think we could, but we would need to cover that with the health department and the county commission. County commission, because they are the public health board for this county. So they operate the health department, essentially. If they order people to quarantine, a class, a team, a group of students, a whole school, I don't know if we can go against that. And that's what's happening, where they're required to identify close contacts. They need our help with that. So we turn over those names. The result of that is their quarantine. Could we just say, we're not going to do that?
Would that basically be what Maxville did, and then Maxville got the whole high school course?
They weren't refusing to do it. It was a Saturday of Labor Day weekend, and they were wanting to know about Monday and Tuesday, and they just couldn't do it over the weekend. And they just couldn't compile that list. I think we just need to have that conversation with them about, here's where we're at, here's what we think we should do.
We can say we trust, and we've done every step we need to do inside the school classroom to be protected, so we're not going to hand over any, we don't think there's any close contact. We can say that.
No, their definition is 6 feet, 10 minutes.
So we need them to change their definition.
Yes, or give us the leeway to say, you guys determine what you're going to do with that. Their quarantine requirements don't apply here, or something like that. I don't know.
Is basically, when they've gone out in public and done it, have they just asked who have you been around, and then that's who go?
I think so. I don't know for sure. Most of at least the families that have been associated with school, it would be a family member tested positive and that household is quarantined. So I don't know about those cases that there's no connection to school.
Just trying to figure out how they do tie, together.
Right.
And then, this is probably a discussion for the health board. Our kids have been doing what we've asked them to do. I've been extremely proud of how our kids have masked up and stayed apart and all of that. And I don't like going through that list either. That was something we talked about right away after it is. Just doesn't seem right that we can't say, hey, if you'd have been not wearing your mask, you'd be quarantined, but since you were, you're gonna get to continue just as an incentive. But I don't know what our leeway is.
So, is there anybody that thinks we need to keep doing it exactly like we're doing it? The consensus is we need to do something different.
I think if our kids are wearing their masks, they need to have every opportunity to stay in school. That's my opinion.
I agree. I mean, if the cases in our county were different, but the risk is low, and if they're wearing their masks, they're staying distance as much as they can, then we need to work with the health department and see what we can do.
So I mentioned what if we change it to, if you're wearing your masks, it's 3 feet for an hour. Where does that come from? Well, we just made it up. We just wanted to we need to be have a little more leeway to do something that makes sense, where if a kid is in class, he's going to be quarantined if somebody tests positive. Then forget it, let's not wear the mask. But 3 feet for an hour, where did it come from? We just pulled it out of the air. We could say 7 days. That came up in our leadership team meeting. Let's reduce the quarantine period. Well, where does that come from? Well, it's just shorter. We don't know. So, excuse me, whatever we're going to do differently, there's no science to back it up, but we need to do something different. I think here's my recommendation. We would take maybe a couple of board members and our administration and meet with county commissioners and the health department and say, we need to do something different. What are our options? Because I'm not sure if we just made a rule, 3 feet for 1 hour if we're wearing masks, if we have a positive case, is the health department then going to say, we need to know who the close contacts are, and that's 6 feet for 10 minutes. Tell us who they are. And we say, well, we have a different rule. Well, I don't know what authority, whose authority takes precedence. I don't know. But I don't like it one bit. I don't like it for all the kids. I don't like it for my kid. It's not right. But we've been beating our heads against the wall since we started this thing.
Well, I think that's a discussion we need to have with the county commissioners
Okay.
as soon as possible.
Okay.
Then after if we meet an agreement there, then emergency board meeting, get together and change our plan.
Yeah.
How does that carry over to like sports practices? Like, are kids being all together, or do they wear their masks during practice?
Not all the time, no. Most of the time.
Or is it
no.
different? I know.
When they're physically exerting themselves, try to, when they huddle up at the end of practice, but it doesn't always happen, and you're sweaty, and but I think the same rule would apply. It's our close contact, but I don't know. We're going to get down to playing a basketball game, and you have 3 positive cases in it. Are they going to quarantine both teams? And it's a little harder to control. In the classroom, we can control that. Here's what I don't want to happen. That's another bridge we'll need to cross. I don't know, but my kid or other kids looking at this and saying, well, Dad, I just want to stay home and learn. If I can still go to youth group and I can still go to my grandparents' house and go out to eat and run cross country, if I can stay up 6 feet from everybody all the time, but I can't in school. I just want to learn at home. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. We want the kids here at school, but it's a better education. So I guess we will try to get our county commission together. I'm not sure how many of them can meet together. They have 3 members. I'm not sure if 2 of them can meet or if only 1 without calling an official meeting.
Okay.
A couple of board members and administration and health department.
Everybody on board? Okay.
We'll get that together as soon as we can.
Okay.
Did, you guys are affected by this. Did any of you guys have anything to say about it?
Speak up, it's all right.
You guys comfortable with where we're at right now?
I think it'd be better if we didn't have to quarantine if we were wearing our masks right, because most of the people who have quarantined, they haven't had symptoms, so. And they were wearing their masks.
I would say that to me it feels mainly it's just kind of what has already been stated about how the quarantine can affect the students academically, because last year when we all had to go do remote learning when all of this started, my personal attention span and interest in the subjects I was learning dropped significantly because I wasn't physically able to be there and do or learn anything. And so the quarantine, while not only just affecting their own personal lives, I imagine is also having a significant impact on them academically, which then, depending on how strong of an effect it's having, I feel even when they do come back, because I don't do a lot of sports, but if I'm mistaken, isn't it something along the lines of like, you have to maintain a certain grade point average in order to do the sport, but if you're coming back already struggling academically, then it's going to be even longer before you'd actually be able to get back into doing the things you like to do. So,
Thank you.
Good insight.
Okay. And we'll see how fast we can get together with the commissioners. Facility tour,
I put this on the agenda here just because it's weird to put it at the last, but I would recommend that we just do this at the end after we've got all our business out of the way. That way we can just drive over to the house. I'll have to come back. So if you're okay with that, we'll move on and do that at the end.
okay. Enrollment,
I provided you some information on the supporting documents for enrollment figures for this school year, starting on page 28. So it lists the number of students in each grade level. Kindergarten students are funded full, used to be half. Preschool, they're funded at half if they're considered at risk, or if they have an IEP, they're special education. All the other preschool students are not funded. So just a comparison there for K-12, we're at 301 compared to 308 last year. It's a little bit of a drop. I think we had 9 students total that opted out of our school, that unenrolled from our school and are doing homeschool or virtual school somewhere else. So without those students, it would have been pretty flat.
How many total families was that? Just 2 families or 5? Or?
3? I think 3.
But 9 kids.
3 or 4. And then just a look at our head count enrollment, just a historical look. You know, it's been up and down. We're about as low as we've been at 301 for K-12. And then just to look at the demographics, I won't go over all of this, but just free and reduced lunch, students from families in poverty is just under 50%. That's a little bit lower than it. It's gone down a bit. Special ed is at 22%. That's right about the state average. English language learners about 10%. So how does this affect our overall budget? The budget is based on the prior year's enrollment, so last year's enrollment or the year before. But that's just for the one number, the 308 or whatever, that number. Then they figure in all the weightings. Well, that's based on this year. So having fewer kids reduces our weightings a little bit during the current year. But we kind of knew where we were going to be. So it's not that far off of where I anticipated being. So, any questions on enrollment?
thank you. Superintendent evaluation.
Over the next few weeks, the board is obligated to evaluate their superintendent once a year. So we'll do that. In the recent past, we've done it with an online survey. That's pretty easy to compile. Less work for Derek to have to put it all together. So if you guys are comfortable with that, I'll send you out that survey. It just has all this information on it. You complete that, and I guess by the end of the month, is that fair? By the end of October?
Yeah.
And Derek will have time to compile that, and he and I meet. So I'll send that up tomorrow. Any questions on that?
Thank you. Board member activities and reports. Sean?
Nope.
Darren?
Nothing.
Colin? Okay, I don't have anything either. Administrative reports.
Okay, I didn't send anything in. Almost to the end of the first quarter, and that's hard to believe, but when we started this journey this year, we didn't know if we'd get 2 weeks in, but almost into that first quarter, so that's good. We have parent-teacher conferences coming up, the 26th and 7th. For the high school, the LS teachers will meet with the parents of those kids that are in their LS class only. If parents want to go visit with other teachers, they can. This is how we've done it in the past. I think the parents were all given an option. Would you like to come in face-to-face, have a remote virtual type conference, or just a telephone conference? So try to be flexible with a lot of leeway there when scheduling that. And the focus will be setting a goal for the student, whether it be an academic goal, behavioral goal, or attendance goal, or whatever. And we can evaluate that goal in the spring and see what kind of movement's been made. But that'll be the main focus is what it's going to look like going forward, because hopefully if there are concerns, the teachers have contacted parents by now and already talked about some of that. It's hard to believe, once again, we have our fall sports wrapping up. Tennis was done last week because they didn't get to participate in regionals and state. Cross-country league coming up this week in this city, and then they've moved the regionals and state for cross-country because of COVID concerns. Regionals is in Bueller, is that right, Danny? And then state will be, Victoria will be hosting that at Hayes. So that's a little bit different. We won't be going to Wamego. And then the volleyball and football wrapping up pretty quick too. By the end of this month, we'll be into the postseason play of those. We are looking forward going with our school play. There was some discussion whether we could do that or not, but Mrs. Hacker went ahead and did tryouts and ordered play materials. And if we have to, we will have the play with no audience, but people will have the option of watching it later, either by buying a CD or it'll be online where they can buy a virtual ticket basically and watch that production online. We haven't decided what format that'll be. We'll decide that as we go forward in the event we have to not have the audience there. The other option with that is we have it 3 nights limit, but people can only go attend one night if we have limited attendance for it. Band and vocal concerts, there's one on the calendar for October 19th. We are not having that because by the time, well, everything's back ordered. We didn't get our music in until about a week ago, I think. Finding the masks and stuff for the band to be able to play, it just wasn't, we weren't able to get it together for the October, but we'll still have our December and spring concerts. So, any questions that you guys have of me? That's all I have.
Tell me about the band mask. How's that work?
They're a mask with a slit in them that's kind of over, and it's mainly when they're not playing, they take their horn down, then they're still wearing a mask. So it's got a vertical slit, I think, that has a flap that comes over. They put their instrument up. Am I right? Some of you guys in band? Okay. And we had some people, different people here in town made those and provided them for the band kids.
So then is there another mask at the end of the horn, or just?
No, we don't have any masks at the end at this
I'm
point.
just curious.
Put a sock over the end of most of them, I think. But no. But the big thing with that concert is the music didn't come in because shipping on everything was so delayed. It was all affected. Anything else?
Thank you. Yep. Mr. Martin?
On the school project house, we'll go over and take a look. We're still working out a few of the details on the budget and the time frame, but we've got a document here that lays out the learning outcomes that these students will learn to use power tools, learn how to basic construction, everything involved, plumbing, electrical, HVAC. We'll have Davis Electrical come in and help us with some of that, and then the kids will do some of that work as well. Learn the right way to do things, do all the drywall, cabinets, learn building codes, teamwork, have to work together with others. And then a timeline here. Really, the goal would be to get all of our framing done, any walls that we're moving, basement framing, all the demo, get the main electrical and the main plumbing service in this first semester. Second semester, get all the electrical and plumbing roughed in. The goal would be to have drywall and insulation installed second semester. That might be a little ambitious, but we'll be flexible. We've got plenty of room in here with our 2-year time frame. So, then year 2 would be the paint and all the electrical finishes, fixtures, cabinets, plumbing and flooring, and then second semester, kind of the final stages of trim, final touch-up. If we have room in the budget and room in the schedule, maybe putting up a fence or building a shed, or that could be a year 3 project, that we still have the house, but we build a shed or something like that. And then I have a budget here. Again, this is not finished. I had this printed out for you, but I left it in my office. So this budget isn't finished. We do need to have some tools, and we will have some rentals, and some of the costs we haven't nailed down yet with what we're comfortable with here yet. And then on our schedule, we've got a planner here that just lays out the time frame of when those things are going to be done, similar to a real construction project, so they can see how all that works. So,
Has anybody worked with companies about maybe giving us a discount on some of these costs?
yeah, we've started that conversation. Yep. So getting some sponsors. I know Adam had talked to Sutherland's to see if they'd be willing to sponsor, and they wanted to see the house and the square footage and see what they can do. But yes, absolutely having sponsors, and we haven't nailed down Davis Electrical what they're willing to do to donate some time and give them some advertising on a sign out front, something like that. Social emotional supports, we're looking at we've gone through the process of identifying students that need extra social and emotional supports. They're probably even more important after the spring that we've had leading up to this year. So we look at behaviors that are they shy and withdrawn, more internal type things, or are they acting out? So kindergarten through 12th grade, we've looked at that. And then we'll look at the next side of that is the ABCs, the attendance and the behavior and the course performance. So how are those students performing? Are they getting to school? Is the behavior okay? Are they keeping up with their coursework? Or are they falling behind, and identifying those students that are most in need of some intervention? So we're going to do that at our professional development day on Friday, finish that up. Last week, Carl and Derek came in for a presentation from KSB on strategic planning, and Elisa sat in on that, and Debbie saw it via Zoom. But basically, strategic planning would be more of a process and not just setting goals, what we've done in the past. What do we want to focus on this year, but where do we want to be in 5 or 10 years, and thinking about our staffing and not just facilities. We look at facilities long term, but where do we want to be with our academic programs and all of those things. It's more of an in-depth process. You guys want to?
I think the webinar was good. There's some things in our community that we were talking we may want to let play out before we do some of that. For instance, the final career resolution, so we know more where we're going to be at funding-wise versus where we are now. It's great to toss the plan out there for here's when we're going to spend what, but we don't have a great feel where funding is at the moment. So,
No, that's, you covered it.
It's really felt like over the last decade, enrollment decline and discussions about consolidation, and then we had this Quivira thing, and now the COVID. It just feels like we're never able to look forward past the next few years, and at some point we really need to be planning forward. And their process involves getting the community members together, say a group of 30 to 50 community members and students and staff members and board members, and seeing what the community wants for their school district. So we kind of settled on maybe this spring, and maybe into next fall, maybe pursue that. One thing about that, there would be some cost to it to have the facilitator come in. Our leadership could do it, but then it becomes our thing, not our thing. It's me leading it, and I don't get to have a say because I'm leading the process. So having just being part of the process and not at the head of the process. So maybe something for down the road. Our camera system, we're not the only school dealing with this. I think this outfit is so busy. We can't even hardly get a hold of them. They've got it installed. They've got to do the programming, and they keep telling Mr. Watts that they can't get in the ports that they need to access the system, and then having troubles getting a hold of them. So it's been a tech issue. So I don't have a time frame on that. We've not paid for it yet, and we won't until they get it right. But it's been kind of disappointing, but I think
The tech people have basically said that the guys at the top decided to sell these cameras cheap with the COVID money being out there, but they didn't hire more people to install and troubleshoot and stuff, so we'll get there.
we've got our financial audit coming up. When are they coming in this month?
I think it's the last week.
Last week of October?
Yeah.
Okay, so that time frame, they probably won't be ready to present in November. It'll probably be more like December meeting when they come in. But that takes them a day and a half. That's coming up. The north entrance to the building, I recall that cinder block was installed this summer. We finally got it painted, and now we're looking at getting some signage for that, and maybe just some simple block lettering that's on the block walls. And then I don't know if you've been to Barton County, their gym or GBT's place out here, their office out here on the highway. They have window screens, with their logo on it, something like that. So that I've got Mark's signs. They're looking at designing us a window screen so it would just cover that whole window. So on the outside you just see graphics. On the inside you can see out. Booster Club is talking about helping to pay for that window screen. We can take a look at that over there. You've all seen it. We'll get your input before we approve anything. And that's all I had for my report.
Thank you. Okay. Closing business items. I guess we have executive session tonight.
Yeah, we'll need an executive session.
Okay. How long?
15 minutes.
Okay.
With who?
What's that?
Okay, with who?
Oh, me and Mr. White.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss the performance of specific employees and potential new hires pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KMA, with Mr. Meyer and Mr. White to be included, and that they return to the open session at 7:59.
Second.
In this room.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded the board go into executive session to discuss performance of specific employees, potential new hires pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA, with Mr. Meyer and Mr. White to be included. That way, return to open session at 7:59 in this room. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Call the meeting back to order. Resignations and contracts.
Yep, I've got a letter of resignation from John Bauer for a junior high Scholars Bowl sponsor. Recommend approving that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the resignation of John Bauer from Junior High Scholars Bowl. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carried.
I got the list of supplemental contracts on page 35. I'd recommend approving that as presented, with the exception of Megan Farrell in place of John Bauer for that Junior High Quiz Bowl.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the supplemental list as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Okay.
And I have a recommendation to hire Cody Ballard as a custodian.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we hire Cody Ballard as a custodian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Future agenda items.
The audit coming up, finalize that evaluation, and then we consider my contract next month. Not approve it, but just consider it. Then, before we formally adjourn, I guess we could adjourn to go on the tour, and we'll have to, at least we'll still have to take minutes, but if anybody leaves, you're more than welcome to leave, I guess. We'll just drive over to the house, and then we can walk over and take a look at the weight room. Those are really the main things. If there's anything in particular you guys would want to look at. Anybody want to look at anything in the building? Okay, well, everybody knows where the house is? 611 North Broadway. We'll just meet over there, and we'll go in the back door, so you go in the backyard. Where's the front?
Back.
Okay.
If you don't know where the house is, look for the big dumpster full of stuff.
And then we'll just adjourn wherever we end up.